So, hobbies. The stuff that we do when we're not working, that we decide to do in our spare and free time. I wonder, Julian, what is it that you get up to in your spare time? What is one of your many hobbies?
Let me think. It's a short list.
3 words, 1 vowel.
Maybe for today I'll try to pick a different story than the usual themes that we've been running into.
Nice. Nice.
Hobbies. In one of my past lives, I used to be and still is into part of like the car enthusiast scene.
Yeah.
So like years and years ago, I got into like super cheap Japanese import cars because they were the only cars I could drive. And then slowly over time, I kind of learned how to appreciate how machines work by working on them. So that kind of like developed into a hobby. But one of the coolest things from that hobby for me was like at the time I was living in regional Queensland. Imagine like a town of 20,000 people.
Yeah.
Not much stuff going on, and people were kind of bored, but had a lot of money. So I noticed that like around town, people going to Woolies or like just driving around casually, there were like really nice cars that I could pick like the make and model of just from looking at them. So I was like, okay, that's kind of cool. So eventually I kind of convinced myself to start like a car enthusiast group.
Yeah.
And the way that worked out is that I put up a group on Facebook saying that, oh, this is the name, here's a logo, we're going to meet here at like a Bunnings car park.
Classic Australian. Yeah. That's like rural northeast.
Yeah, 7 p.m. Saturday, Bunnings car park, completely empty. And then the first meet kind of like started with like 3 cars, so it wasn't 0, which is kind of cool.
Something.
And what kind of threw me off by surprise is that like the group started like growing like real quick, like to the point where like not only the market was really good in that town, but also people were driving in from other towns to just show up at the meetup.
It just like came through like word of mouth.
Yeah. And it was totally not my, there was no like marketing attempts or anything on my part. All I did was put up a name and a logo, and I was like creating a post once a month, and people were like, oh yeah, cool, new meetup group. And then just met so many cool people through that. And I think one of the highlights for me from that group is that like I got to meet people who are like really obsessed about like a particular thing, and it just happened to be like around cars. And it really like there was like a broad spectrum of people who were like into car enthusiasm, if that's even a word. So like no matter what the car, could be like Australian, could be Japanese, could be German, doesn't matter. But they were all obsessed with like making something good, which was super cool.
It's like a cool environment to be in. And for those of you that aren't like car enthusiasts listening and have got this far, the reason for like the hobby topic is basically like stuff beyond work, like stuff that like drives you, that like inspires you, that motivates you, the stuff that is almost like the reason why you live, almost to an extent, as an extension of who you are and the experience. And Julian came up with this idea, and I've spent a lot of time in a lot of different areas, more than just running, basically, which like Julian has as well. And so I think there's some part to the human experience, or some part to like the purpose of doing something outside of ourselves, outside of like what makes us money, what makes us live and survive. And so to try and tap into like some of the things people gain, or like why it's valuable to have hobbies, or like experiment with hobbies and do different things. The part that I find fascinating is that like in part of like previous trying to start businesses, like a business thing, you start to create like Facebook groups or groups of people, and you create this like massive group that exists without any intention to do anything with, except for just meet cool people and to just like be like, let's just hang out here. I think this is like a cool idea, and you're not trying to gain anything from it, but it's purely like, how would you rather spend your time? Almost is the question. Or like, what are these external hobby metric things that you want to put time into? And so for you, do you feel like it was the hobby itself or the people doing the hobby that was like important, or how do you like separate the two?
I think the thing that kept me going back, and the reason why I kept hosting like these car meets, is that I got to like expand like my social network in a way. Like every time I hosted meet, I would meet someone who was like super passionate about that particular topic, and that kind of drew me and like made me curious about wanting to continue, even though there was no profit motive in that at all.
Yeah.
Maybe there was like social clout and like people knew the car I drove and whatever, but like that was not my motivation. My motivation was that, there were like all these super cool people in the community that I would not have met otherwise.
Yeah.
So that was great. That was great. Yeah.
And so like, from that, what are some of the other things that you just tried to do? And let's go. Like, what are the things you've tried to do, and like, where do you feel like these ideas have spawned from?
Yeah.
Of like a hobby of trying to do something.
Yeah. I don't know. A lot of the hobbies I've had kind of come about from necessity. Like the car enthusiast thing was kind of like, I was at a stage in my career where it's like I had plenty of free time outside of work, because I was working like 12-hour shifts, 4 days a week, and I had 4 days off. So in those 4 days off, my brain was on overdrive, like constantly thinking of ideas. So it gradually spawned this car enthusiast group from nowhere, and I decided to like put my faith into it, and that was cool. But one of the other pivotal hobbies that I kind of picked up along the way was like just after uni, I started playing with like programming and learning how to code, because I was kind of curious about what it would take to develop a website for free so that I didn't have to pay anyone. So it kind of started with that kernel of a challenge, in that like, in my mind, I was like, okay, I don't want to pay anyone. I'm going to empower myself to build this thing that I have no idea how to do. And that kind of set me up to eventually make the jump into the software industry like 5 years later. But I couldn't have predicted it at the time. It was just like something that I thought was cool or could be useful. And I really liked the process, and I just continued that process until like later on, like, someone was looking for a software developer. It's
purely like to solve a problem, or like to make the most of your time and like explore your curiosities. Is a lot of it.
I wish it was cooler. I wish I could say like, I had this grand scheme I was trying to hit, and I picked up this journey like from here and got to there, but it was kind of like, it's really messy in it. But one thing I know for sure is that across many hobbies, like if you don't enjoy doing the thing for the thing, then why are you doing it? Right?
You shouldn't, like, that is a huge part of like picking a hobby, is like deciding that like you actually want to do the thing. Like it sounds crazy and silly enough, but I feel like that's a part that people miss as like purely the reason why you should do it. I think running and fitness gets a lot of slack for people seeing the value of having some level of fitness but not enjoying the process. But then you get some people and like some nutters like ourselves that like love the process of running and like fitness and that stuff in general. And when you realize that it is about the process of things, it's definitely been one of the keys as to how I've seen patterns and gone, okay, is this something that I really want to do and like stay consistent to? In terms of like some of the hobbies that I've experimented with.
What would be one of them you've experimented with?
So like one of the random ones was like improv comedy. It was like tried like a free class. I was like, okay, I'll do a term of this. It's like an 8-week course or a 10-week course or something. And it was something that was out of my comfort zone, like somewhat of like personal growth, to like be able to come up on a stage and just come up with something off the top of your head and like embrace it, which is like, comedy is naturally very hard on stage, but to put yourself in that uncomfortability of it, it makes it like really quite difficult, basically. And so you get to put yourself out of that comfort zone, and then part of that is like, do you like the process of doing it? And which like I did to an extent.
Right.
But I think it's like, do you like the process and do you like the outcome? Because I was like, I also had to try and see, where was this taking me? Like, like, is this something that I'm appreciative is just as my hobby, as my thing that I just do? Or is it something that I want to like get good at and develop into something and potentially like get paid for it? Or is it something that I want to take as a hobby and just take it to the extreme level and not worry about getting paid for it, but just going deep into the hole? And I was like, to make it successful monetarily wise, I'm like, definitely not the right avenue. Like, possible, but like you'd have to go deep into a hole somewhere.
Right.
Then to like go deep into it, I'm like, at this time I was already like training triathlon and like doing Ironman and trying to fit run, swim, bike in. And this was like a 1 class a week that I had to fit in somewhere to like make happen. And so I was like, if I had the choice between the two, where would I rather like spend my time? I'm like, it's like doing triathlon or running, and so it's a case of you got to experiment and try it. And I didn't want to just keep sticking around just for the sake of sticking around.
Right.
As like one of the different niche topics. And so more recently, one of the side projects or side hobbies has been like 100 runs with people. And I think one of the parts of the process of it is like understand whether you like the process of things and to set yourself like a 10-part point, like a seasonal thing to go, we're going to do this for a period of time and lock in and just, I'm going to do it and see if I like it. See if I like the process of it. And so I probably got a bit in and didn't quite click early enough that I just didn't like writing, basically, which is like the main part of the process. Like you got to talk to people, but the main part of it is the writing and like posting something, because I can talk to people all the time. And so like, if I realised that earlier, I should have changed it up to something a little bit different, but then there's the fear of videoing, and that's a whole different story.
Right.
Whereas now that I know I'm trying stand-up comedy as like a full-on thing, it's like, you've got to go and try it for like 10 things. Don't commit that you're going to become the next stand-up comedian, but like commit to a season. Commit to like 10 of it. If there isn't a season, just commit to like 10, 12, 15, somewhere between 10 and 20 things.
Right.
And just like say, I'm going all out, I'm going to make it happen. And see if you like the process of that.
Yeah. Quite like that actually. Like, kind of, yeah. Because like, it makes me think like, you know, that there are times when we think that we might like something or don't like something. And then when we do it, it kind of like reveals to us whether that's actually true or not.
Yeah.
And I find like the idea of like committing yourself for at least a chunk of time kind of is a really rapid way, or maybe even guaranteed way, to kind of give you a sense of like, do I like this process or do I not like this process?
Yeah.
And should I continue or not?
Yeah. Yeah, I think like if it's 1 to 2 to 5, like 1 to 2, 1 to 3 is probably almost like enough, but not quite enough to know whether you really enjoy it. Like you can know if you really hate it, but I think if you're like somewhat okay at it, like you can see whether or not you might like it or not. And like it might be on the fence. Whereas like the 10 to 20 is enough time for you to really start refining the process of wanting to get better at it. And going like, do I want to refine the process and get better at this thing? Or like keep doing it for the sake of doing it. I forget sometimes that because I'm so process driven of like, I want to get better at things. Like started golf in the last 3 or 4 months. Like I don't realize just how many different hobbies or like side projects that I'm currently trying to balance.
Right.
That you start to refine the chipping and the putting, and you like the process of like getting better at that.
Yeah.
And to go, is this something that I want to keep doing or not? Which I went on another tangent before. Coming back to it, some people just like doing it for the sake of doing it.
Yeah.
For instance, like a netball, like a like community netball, or like friends team of netball, mixed netball. A lot of people do it, but like there is no intention for them to get any better or to like refine the process of getting better at it.
Right.
Like a lot of it's just rock up each week. There's no training. It's just let's just go and play and have fun. And like your skill level more or less stays the same. Like it gets slightly better, as opposed to picking something to like refine on.
Yeah. Makes me think of like, I don't know, like someone practicing, I don't know, like Japanese tea ceremony or like crocheting or something like. And it makes me think like maybe with hobbies where the milestones aren't necessarily clear in terms of like money, then what are the goals that you set for yourself to show that you're making progress? And maybe for some people, maybe it's not important to set those targets, and it's kind of like a freewheeling discovery of like what could work or what could not.
Yeah.
And maybe that's cool. Yeah.
I think that is like a big part of like, do you actually want to get better at this thing, or is it just a way to like relieve your brain of something?
Yeah.
And so I think, like a high performance high, you've got to get better at your work, get better at life.
Mm-hmm.
Mentality and philosophy, it creates a lot of stress and angst and anxiety in your world, which as a result basically means that like it takes up a whole bunch of mental bandwidth and like mental fatigue. And so people kind of who don't have hobbies or are like really intense on study or doing their job really well and just don't have time for anything outside of like their work or their family. And then even then, like sometimes their family like feels the brunt of it.
Right.
Whereas the idea of like deep work is that you need the time and the break to be able to recover from the work that you've done, and like to get your mind to think differently about what you're doing if it's something a little bit more intentional.
Yeah.
And so I think maybe the internal reflection of is whether it's work, whether it's the hobbies, I always feel like there's something that I want to like progress at or get better at in. Whereas some people just have jobs that they rock up to and they just do the work, or like stack shelves, or like just dig a hole, or just look after people, like as a nurse, or just teach kids. That like there is sometimes like no process of wanting to get better at the thing. You just rock up and do the thing,
right,
unconsciously, and you go home and that's it. Like almost like a factory.
Yeah.
And so if you do that, it's sort of like you either do that to create hobbies that you like, or sometimes you do it and then you have no hobbies. You're just so destroyed from it. Or like you're really good at work and so you're like, I need to do something outside of work to intentionally get better at, to take a break.
Yeah.
Which I think is always like what this is aimed for, is that hobbies create space in your mind to create a separation from who you are as a person of like work. Because it's so often at like networking events when you catch up with people or you meet someone new, it's like top 3 questions is like, what's your job? Like 95% of the time they just want to know what you do.
Yeah.
As opposed to like getting comfortable with asking the question of like, who are you, and like, who are you outside of what you do? Which
Right. Those are big questions.
Yeah. It's a lot for some people.
Yeah.
Like it's a lot for someone to answer. Fuck. Either you've got some amazing hobbies, or like you literally are not anyone else except for your work.
Yeah.
Which like I almost think is like wild.
Yeah.
To not have anything outside of like who you are and what you do.
Yeah. Like I've definitely had like situations where like, I've asked the question of like, oh, so what do you like doing in your free time? And it kind of like stumped people, which kind of like threw me off by surprise. I thought it was kind of like a very simple question, but actually maybe it's deeper than it seems. Like, I mean, who are you as a question is like a huge question, but like, what do you like to do? Full stop. It's like, turns out to be bigger than expected.
Yeah. It's a massive question for some people to ask, basically.
Yeah.
Of like, people probably get into a routine of going, I'm an engineer, I work in an office, I do this as my job, I'm a lawyer, I'm a doctor, I'm a teacher. And that's who we define ourselves as. And I think it is like part of who you are, but I don't think it's the whole part of who you are, from like developing your character, of like developing who you are and what you've achieved, and like tackling different things. I almost forget the amount of life experiences or life differences that I've tried to accomplish without purely just travel.
Right.
In the last little bit of, trying like skydiving, bungee jumping, stand-up, improv, what else, the 100 runs, writing posts, doing content, doing podcasts, like this is one, running, triathlon, swimming, biking, golf, you try to experiment with rock climbing, and like, it's like a wide chasm of different ideas and perspectives.
Right.
That, you're trying to figure out who you are as a character and how do you want to spend your time.
I wonder, so here's a question that just came up for me. Would it be more, which is the more difficult question? how do you like to spend your money, or how do you like to spend your time? Which is the more difficult question?
I think for me currently is like how I spend my time is easier. But I think there is more importance to the question of how you spend your time versus like how you spend your money. Because money is effectively like a time exchange. A lot of the time, which is probably where you're going. And like you need to spend some of your time making some money.
Yes.
Whatever that is, like whether it's 1 second if you're Jeff Bezos, or like, 50-hour weeks if you're like plebs. Just like doing your 9-to-5 job and like going about your day, and you have to like sacrifice some of that 168 hours in a week to be able to afford to do some of the other stuff in the week.
Right.
How would you answer that question? Of is it money or time? Like, how much do you think about how you spend your time versus how you spend your money?
I think it's a trick question in my head, because money is just a stored medium of time. So we exchange time for money, and money can be exchanged for time as well in many ways. So which is the more difficult question? I think it's more, for some reason in society, I feel like we find it more sensitive to kind of like reveal our bank statements versus talking about how we spend our, like, what the hobbies we do outside of work, which is kind of curious. So we're more sensitive around the bank balance versus the hobbies, which, it's an interesting one.
It's an interesting thought process, because it's like, if you've got no money in the bank or like negative money in the bank, then obviously you've like overemphasized on like being present to like having like consistently of the amount of time, like making the most of your time.
Right.
And like for whatever money's coming in, you're like, I'm just going to make the most of this for what I'm doing, or like I'm just going to get ahead on my experiences, and like I'll figure out how to pay for this stuff later.
Right.
Effectively. Whereas like if you ask someone if they've got like 200 grand, $1 million in the bank, it's like stored time.
Yeah.
And it's like, why is that a problem of like sharing like your way of stored time? Or like how, like almost like, what do you do for work, and like how have you chosen to spend your time to earn your time?
Wow. Yeah.
It's like a really deep way of thinking about it.
Yeah. It's like that, that Justin Timberlake movie with the time on their arms. Do you know that one?
Yeah. It's not about time. It's like
no, it's not about time.
That's a different one.
Different. But yes, it's where like it plays to the theme of like time as a currency.
Yeah.
Where you die the moment your time runs out, which
Yeah.
Yeah.
Such a deep level thought of like money and time and why we live, and yeah.
Yeah, I think the question about hobbies is a good one, because it's kind of like, okay, like if, outside of sleep, outside of the necessities that we all have to go through to live, then you're given that choice of like to act in a certain way or not, and hopefully like we all have that choice. I mean, circumstances change, but how we make those decisions like is really important. Yeah. No matter how little, maybe it's like 30 minutes, for like people, parents or whatnot, maybe it's 30 minutes, but like how you spend that 30 minutes could like be crucial. Yeah.
I think it can also be easy to come across of like, we're two young guys that have got like all the time in the world. And so whether you feel like that, I feel like that at the moment, of that there is a lot of time to spend, and like how to use it wisely. Like I think there was a time when I think a lot of people don't appreciate how much 168 hours a week is.
Oh.
Like, in the sense of most people work 40 hours a week to like 50. Even if you're like a real badass, like workaholic, 60 hours a week is a lot to work. But you've still got like 108 hours left of time. Of that, 48 is like sleeping, assuming, but like who sleeps nowadays? I don't. That'll be a pod for another time.
That's the secret.
Yeah, that'll be a pod for another time. We're like, guys, you gotta sleep. You gotta get your 8 hours. But like
sponsored by 8 Sleep. What?
Yeah, brand marketing already, guys. Come on. This is like massive viewership audience. One for me, one for you.
Sounds good.
It's like basically round up to 50 hours a week. Was it 48 times 7? 8 times 7 is 56. So it's like 56 hours a week. So you've got, quick math, 42 hours, 52 hours a week, 52.
Yeah.
Hours of like time, which like you split over 5 days, 5 weekdays is 10 hours a day. And so, it's over-engineered on the weekend, but it even comes back to, like, I almost get frustrated when people are like, I don't have time to run a marathon.
Oh.
And like, it's like I don't have time to be fit is probably like a little bit more of the average mindset around fitness and health. And so like a marathon timing block, once you get up to that point, is like somewhere between 5 to 10 hours a week to be able to have a solid, impressive, like, reward for your effort time a week as you grow and build. And so if you're speaking that you have 50 hours left of the week, you've got 40 hours left to like do admin and cook and like that sort of thing. And you've got, that's like a whole working week's worth of time. Like you think like your work's time, but like you can fit way more in than what you think. I don't think enough people are aware of that, of like, how do you want to spend your time? Like tonight is probably almost like, I didn't realize just how meta of like a time thing this was, of like, both of us have like finished work. It was 6 o'clock roughly when we started. We're doing a podcast for an hour, we'll go for an hour, and then we'll go for a run after this. And then last week we got tea as well. And it's like, that's like 3 hours worth of time outside of your work day to put into something, anything that isn't just your work.
So why do you do it?
Because it's about how you spend your time. How do you feel about like the amount of time that you have in the week to explore other things outside of work?
Man, like, I wish I didn't need to sleep. Like, seriously, legit, I wish I didn't have to sleep. Like, there's just so much to do. Like, I'd spend the time reading books, like, just going nonstop. Like, but I can't.
Yeah.
Sleep is almost like a hassle.
Yeah.
Maybe there are some days when I feel like, I'm so exhausted, time to sleep. But like, whenever sleep comes around, I'm like, oh God, I'm wasting the next 7.5 hours, 8 hours. So just I feel like there's not enough. Whatever that says about me, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think that's why I struggle to sleep so much. I'm like, I feel like it's a waste of time, even though it is inherently a recording recovery process.
Yeah.
To like, generally it's like trying to help you be better. Like, don't really feel like, I don't believe it at the moment. I'd like to believe it.
Big
Like,
sleep.
I know
Big
it's
sleep
true.
is out to get you.
Yeah, big sleep. Big sleep's about to
Big
get you. They're like,
They're telling you lies, bro.
this is how we get them. Like, they're just like taking the money off your arm. The time is like eating it away.
Turns out when you're sleeping, they put you on a treadmill to like generate power, but
Yeah.
little that you know.
It's like full Matrix mode. Like you're stuck in. You're like, as soon as you go to sleep, they let someone plugs it into the back and then like closes the.
Oh shit.
Yeah, it's wild.
Oh damn.
That's a full joke.
Whoa.
I hope there's no flat earthers or something like this in this pod.
Never sleeping again. I'm gonna find these people.
Yeah. And so it's like this time, effort, energy of like, how do you want to spend it?
Yeah.
And so the question of, why do you do it in the first place? Why do you want to create so much time? Why is that an important thing to think about?
I think it's important to me because like I have so much fun living life.
Yeah.
Like, and that probably includes like the good times and the bad times.
Yeah.
Like, I can probably smile about it now, like going past the bad times, but in the moment, like even the bad experiences are like there for a reason.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
Yeah.
You know, like in running terms, it's like you get injured, that's fine, but it's also a process that you kind of have to go through. Like there's no bypassing it.
Yeah.
And through that period, you kind of learn things about yourself.
Yeah.
So up times, down times, they're part of the cycle.
Yeah, it's like full part of like the groove and like what's happening and how it's all functioning, basically.
Yes.
And I think it's like the hard times, they like define who you are. They like help to create who you want to show up as and like the time that you have. I think it's this, the other part that I almost like, it's hard to comment on, but like you can see it at some point of like people that become parents and spend a lot of time with their kids.
Yeah.
Like you don't know what the feeling's like until you have that, and you know, you hope one day that that's like, I hope that's a thing one day that you have kids. But to have time outside of just family and work, is that there is inherently a benefit to like being active and having hobbies and doing stuff. Maybe it's just my eye on my thought process of like, it felt like as I was a kid growing up, like that's the way that Dad did, was a lot of like work, come home, recover from work, and like repeat the process consistently, as opposed to like making use of your time.
Yeah.
Like it really, I think that's one of the parts that like people that have done endurance sports or endurance training don't like, gets missed out on as like one of the benefits to understanding, is that doing an Ironman is like one of the hardest training things in the world, because you got to like maximum to do it like well, you got to do like a 15 to 20 hour week at the peak, which like eats into a lot of your free time. And when you're working a 50-hour week plus travel plus, you know, cooking and like all the other things, it really reduces the amount of extra time that you have in a week.
Right.
But you can still do stuff.
Damn. Yep.
And so what it almost like teaches you is like just how much time you have. Like I come back from doing the Ironmans and the ultras and stuff like that, and come back and go, I've got so much free time beyond the training to just do stuff. And like I get somewhat frustrated when people are like, fuck, this marathon training block, it's takes up so much time.
You ain't seen nothing yet.
Yeah. Like you haven't. Like, and it you could do anything. Like it's not about doing the endurance sport. It's like to appreciate just how much time you have on this planet, like to do something with. And I do like to think that like to some level or an extent, it's like there is like a privilege to be able to have a job where you don't need to work a second job, that can live and that you can afford hobbies and like do stuff outside. You've got disposable income to be able to do hobbies, or like whether or not you do or you don't. There is some inherent benefit to doing it that isn't just, you know, earning money to like just pay the bills and food and like school and stuff like that. That you've got more beyond that.
Yeah.
Like privilege of additional time.
Yeah. It's almost like, it's going to sound nerdy, but I thought of like two bar charts where like, you know, where if the time you have and the time that's required maybe are the two bar charts. So at a point where, you know, you're in a position where you can't afford hobbies, it's kind of like this, where you're putting all your time in, it's not enough. Yeah. And then let's say you fast forward a little bit, and then you reach a point of parity where like the time you put in is the time you need to put in. Yeah. And then the point at which hobbies come in is when the time you put in is more than what is required. Yeah. In a sense. So I guess maybe that unlocks that's where spare time comes in. Maybe. I don't know if that visual quite.
As in like when you're working less hours for more money?
Yeah, well, like maybe there's excess to what is demanded. Yeah. And that's where the question of how do I spend the excess energy comes from.
Which is like basically people with money in the bank that are like, they've got this extra energy or extra process that they don't actually have to work for, that they've banked up.
Yeah, or even time.
Yeah.
Like if you have to spend 16 hours a day just to survive, you're not going to be thinking about how do I reach my potential.
Yeah.
You're struggling to survive. But when the hours required of you is like 5 hours, then you have the privilege of like asking that question.
Yeah.
Which is a great question.
Yeah. I think it probably is like the other philosophy of that is like, speaking of like jobs and how like jobs versus business fit into like life, of like, I've always felt like there's some level of business owner, entrepreneur somewhere in me, but I don't know how to like facilitate that at the moment. And so one thing I've been thinking on is like, why is that most of personal development like promotes business and entrepreneurship? Because it's inherently in the long term meant to give you your time back, because you've created something of value, so that like you don't have to work the big weeks. But then a lot of the early stage businesses, you've got to work the big weeks, so there's no hobby time. There's no time to do anything outside of like what you're doing.
Yeah.
And so you're trading your time for like future rewards that you assume you're going to get paid for, but you don't know. It's not guaranteed. And so I think if you get stuck into like, if you listen to a podcast, you're looking for stuff outside of what you're doing, is like, it's probably like a very Chris Williamson thing to say, of like, if you're like very content with what you're doing, you're probably not listening to this. But if you're listening to something of like, how do I like optimize my hobbies, or like do something in that regard? I've lost the train of thought that I was going with. It's almost this case of, what are you actually trying to achieve to leave your 9 to 5? Like people like hate the job, or like hate this job, and I was for a while. It's like, how do you actually create more time, or like are comfortable with the exchange of time for money?
Right.
And that is, whether it's a job or business, that is the task. And with your job, it's a lot more known, the exchange for time. Whereas a business, there's like invariably like a very big change, or like exponential change in money for time.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like in today's culture, like the word and the label of like entrepreneurship has become super popular, in that like it almost becomes, it paints a picture of like, everyone should do this.
Yeah.
But I feel like, as with anything, like people become entrepreneurs for a reason, people become chefs for a reason, people become F1 drivers for a reason, and my current thinking around it is that I feel like the people at the top of the game are doing it because they like the process, and somehow they found the right timing, the right conditions, so that they've aligned what they naturally do, or what they like to do, with what society rewards them with. Yeah, so that's probably the bigger question mark, as opposed to like, like people all have to make businesses. I don't think so. Like, maybe there's like infinite fulfillment that can be found from like teaching kids, and that's great. Like, and to me, like, it doesn't really matter what it is, but it matters more about like, are you fit for the thing that you're trying to do?
Yeah.
Can you find happiness through that? Maybe that's the ultimate question. And then, as a complement to that, is like, can you survive doing the thing that you like to do?
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, do you get enjoyment out of it, and can you survive off that as being a valuable resource?
Yeah.
I think like the other thing people forget is that most businesses have more employees than what they have founders and directors. And so naturally the world requires people to work for a company. Like it's just, even if you want a company, you can't hate the 9 to 5, because you also are forcing people to do the same thing.
Yeah.
Like you're, like it might not be a 9 to 5 job, but like you're not forcing them, but like it's on free will that they're coming to work for you to be able to help you earn money, because they're in exchange for some smaller amount of money, basically.
Yeah, I think there is, the exchange there is like, employee versus founder, is that I feel like the exchange really involves risk. Like, you're exchanging less upside financially for less risk. Whereas if you want more upside, you have to take on more risk, which is what the founders do. And that's why we should venerate founders.
Yeah, like they definitely take on more risk, and they take on all the responsibility.
Yes.
That you don't see as an employee as a result of like feeling that pressure.
Yeah.
And that's why they get paid more, because they've gone out and taken the risk and the benefit for it. But at the same time, like, it is a less risky process to work for somebody. But at the same time, like, it's not a riskless thing, because you've still got to do your job. There's no reason why they can't create redundancies, or it's a false certainty to an extent. We've got a lot more talking about work than a job, than like hobbies. I like try and bring it back into hobbies. We'll probably go off on another tangent somewhere.
Okay.
In order to like, coming back to like the spare time and how do you want to do it, I think there's like this, I'm like thinking, my overthinking self, if you didn't think of the last podcast around overthinking, it's like, how do I optimize my experiences and time that I have in experimenting with new hobbies versus like choosing this as like a hobby that I want to spend time into, or a season of time into.
Yeah.
And sometimes thinking about it, and sometimes not thinking about the end process of it. Mm-hmm. Like running has become a staple for me, like without question. But golf is new, and spending a bit of time into it and practicing stuff. And I've almost got to like look past the fact of like trying to aim for like an 18 handicap, or like get down to a scratch handicap or something, to just accept that it is a process of showing up, and that I don't have to achieve something by some time. I can just enjoy like working on each type of shot or each thing, and each time you do it, you get better. Yeah. Kinda.
I'm reading this book, and it's called Zen and the Art of Archery.
Yeah.
I'll try to tie this back in. I'll try to keep it contained, but the way that it ties in is that like within any sport, in this case it's archery, there are many levels to the game. In that before you even pick up the bow, you have to get your form right. Then once you've spent the 10,000 hours getting the form right, you can then pick up the bow, and then you have the next 10,000 hours to learn how to pull the string, to load your bow, and then to like eventually release the bow. And I think, you know, progression might be hitting some grand achievement in that sport, but it also could be like mastering a particular technique.
Yeah.
So maybe it depends on how you look at it. Yeah.
It's like a balance of doing it for the joy of it versus like refining it and like experimenting with something new. Like, do you need something new? Do you want something to change? Which was something that like I was thinking about earlier, but went to wait a little bit, was the idea of like Marcus Aurelius or like the old, you know, Stoics of that time. And it was like this book, or this process of, he was like, these are all out of topic. He was like a soldier, and then he was like in law, and then he was a father, and then he was like, you know, a Stoic, a philosopher. Like, there's 5 different jobs basically. That like, it wasn't just a cleaner and a janitor, and like, there was like decent. But like every time you had to restart a different job or a different process, like there is this tax you have to pay for starting something again new and being like a pleb at whatever you decide at. Like, some people have a natural ability for things, but most of the time, like, you're shit ass, basically. And so every hobby that you ever try, you're basically shit ass to start with, but you kind of like it, and so you want to get better at it.
Yep.
And so some people do the same thing because they don't want to go back to the start of trying something new and looking silly. Like the amount of times that I've heard of guys that like don't go back to the gym because they don't want to appear weak when they go back to the gym. It just makes no sense.
Makes no sense.
Because like you got to go back to the gym to get strong so you don't look weak.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
You can't just like bide your time and wait 2 years.
Where do you think the strength comes from?
Yeah.
What? Strength comes from weakness.
It's like,
bruh.
Like there's so much to the ego of that, and I think the point is like hobbies are like a game of ego, of like you working from the start and working your way back up and coming back in, of like this is something that I'm going to refine and put part of my character in, of like a hobby, of something that I naturally want to spend my time doing.
Wow, that's a great great point you just touched on, which is like being perceived as a beginner is actually a barrier in itself.
Yeah.
Huh. But that's like part and parcel of like picking up something new. No matter what it is, like a hobby, a job, like you're gonna be exposed to new information. But isn't that why we do it? Like for me, if I'm picking up a new thing, like it's kind of like exploring a new segment of reality. So that's why I do it, not so that I can see the same stuff again.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah. And I think that's what stops a lot of people from trying something new or something different to refine the process. Like no one would try rock climbing because they'll look silly and like only on like the baby little like climbs. And like that might affect someone's head because like, yeah, I should be able to do these big crazy climbs.
You put in no effort.
Yeah. There's like an expectation of like, given that you do something, as opposed to like working on just like slowly getting better at it.
I mean, maybe if you hit the jackpot and like you pick the one thing that like you're born to do and like, wow, you're suddenly great from the beginning, maybe that's good.
Yeah.
Then at least you know. But if you're stumped even before trying the thing, then like,
yeah,
like you'll never know.
Which is like, it's probably like I'd refine what I said earlier of like getting better earlier and like wanting to get better. It's like by naturally doing it, you understand the process of the hobby. Like you understand the depths of like what it is. And so, say with like stand up, because I could talk about running, but stand up is like, you just think when you look at it, you just go up and say something funny. But when you pull it apart, it's like you've got to have a premise, then you've got to have like a lead up, and then there's got to be a punchline. There's got to be some part that is actually funny to it. And then it's like, does it flow? Then it's like, is it like a subtle thing? And there's books on it, and every single hobby there is like depths and levels, like you were saying. There's levels to every game that you think when you observe something on the outside looking in, you're like, whoa, that's just basic as shit. Like running is like, that's what I like about it. Like it's part of the joy of running is that it's a very simple hobby.
Yes.
It is incredibly simple, incredibly basic.
Yes.
But like the more you go into it, you worry about gels and electrolytes and like different types of runs and different types of shoes and like how many days do you need rest days? How much like injuries? Like there is so much refinement of it that once you go into the deeper levels of it, that the mundane becomes interesting.
I think on the topic of refinement, I think the refinement comes from the thing you're doing teaching you more about yourself.
Go on.
Because the more I run, the more not so much the more I run. I think running is always a reminder to me to stay in touch with my body. Every single run I go on, it forces me to pay attention to how my breath is, how my feet are doing, how my cardiovascular system is doing. So it forces that awareness. And I think the more I do it, the more that awareness kind of spreads to other aspects of my life.
And so then how the car situation teach you something about yourself?
The car situation taught me about how I can create a name, and the name can attract people who were looking for the same thing.
Yeah. But like, what does that it teaches you about how people's psychology works? That doesn't teach you about yourself. What did you learn through the process of that about yourself?
That I could start something new and people would like it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I found that whole step of putting up a name or like creating a group on Facebook like super intimidating. That was probably not the first time I've ever created things publicly, but like one of the big ones that took off by itself.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it actually affected people so much that when I had left, they were like, no, please don't leave. You need to host this group, otherwise it's going to collapse. I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm leaving.
Yeah.
And it eventually collapsed, which is kind of sad, but yeah.
It didn't quite exist outside of you.
Yeah.
So then what do you think? Somebody's probably just got an absolute whack to the microphone. Sorry, guys. What do you think it was about you leading the group that made it stay intact versus when you left, it just fell apart?
To put it really, like it's going to sound real boring, but the only thing I did well, to be honest, from what I see, is consistency. Yeah. I was the person who was every single month, consistently at a certain date, would put up an event. And that's what the group needed.
Yeah. No one wanted to take on the responsibility of consistently taking it on.
Yeah. Like the group grew from like 0 to like, I don't know, 900 to 1,000 people in like a few months, maybe less than 6 months. And all that organic growth was not me. I didn't do shit. It was all word of mouth.
You were just consistent to showing up.
Yeah. And like, I would meet people and they'll be like, oh, thank you for starting the group. I'm like, all I do every month is hit this button and it pops up the event and I show up and that's it.
Yeah.
But I don't tell them that. I'm like, yeah, no worries.
Yeah. No worries, guys. It's a hard life. It's all this responsibility.
Yeah.
I think there's something to like, hobbies are something that you do consistently. Like if you break it down to that level of like, you wouldn't call it a hobby if you do it once every 6 months.
Yes.
But it's probably something you do every month or like couple of weeks or week, day. There is like some consistent or pattern to the hobby that you like and you want to go and do.
Yeah. Like there's no need for external motivation. It's all like, I just want to do the thing and you go and do it.
Yeah.
Case closed. And
yeah.
Yeah. And if you get to share it, and if you get to talk about it, or like share these stories of it after the fact, it's like icing on the cake.
Yeah.
But you'd be out there doing it anyway.
Yeah.
Rain or shine, you'll be out there running.
Yeah.
Rain or shine, hilly or not, you'll still be on your feet out there running. Like, no matter what challenges you might perceive, you'll still be out there.
I think that's like the thing of like, you just know you'll do it anyway.
Yeah.
It's like, if you had your choice of like how you'd spend your time, you'd be doing it anyway. Which is like, even though like the 100 runs was hard and it was somewhat of a hobby, the riding was the hobby. Like, I was going to be running anyway. And so it was just a matter of time to like meet enough people and have enough conversations. And whenever I think about it, I like go through all the conversations and processes and things that I've had and refined to it, and people that I've met and people that I met that weren't part of it, that is sort of like a, holy shit, like you create something in the process.
Yeah.
Like it's a creating of things, of like evidence or connections or something. It's just something about your character of like, I've always wondered like on a CV, do you put like your hobbies in at the bottom? Because like I've always like, ever since I've started to do some cool shit like running, I'm like, yeah, I'll chuck these. I'll chuck these things. I'm an Ironman. I'm an ultra runner. I've done 100 runs. I'm like, I'm a badass.
I mean, it's a bit if you pitch it to like someone who lives in LinkedIn, it's kind of cringe.
Yeah.
But to me, it's like that's where the essence of someone lies. You know,
Yeah.
it's like it's not the job you're doing or the necessary stuff you have to get through. It's like how do you spend your time tells me more about who you are than the necessary stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like this balance of like people that have a business that is their whole life, that don't necessarily have a hobby outside of it, and like almost like sometimes having the expectation that people that work for you will have the same thought process over the time. But for a lot of businesses, that's not the case. Like at Tesla or SpaceX or Amazon, like the crazy companies, like there is an expectation that that is the requirement to be a part of it. But for a lot of businesses, it's like a way, a means to like put food on the table, make everyone like have some comfortability, some food, a car, you know, maybe not a car, but like to have some essentials to be able to like live and do stuff.
I mean, even if it's that extreme of like someone putting in their whole life effort, all their energy into their work, like I think that's kind of cool too, in the sense that they're also obsessed, but about a singular thing. They're putting all of their life's energy into that one thing, which I can appreciate. Probably not for me, because I would get too stuck, I think. I kind of need distractions.
Yeah. Do you think hobbies are more distractions or help to create focus?
It helps create focus eventually, but in the moment it looks like distraction.
Yeah.
And how this might play out is that, like, you know, on a weekend, I might go for a 2-hour walk and look like I'm doing nothing. But in my mind, there are all these things happening in the background that is like background processes that have to run, that once I come back, I'm like ready to go again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think there was like some truth to a study around that of people actually think better after they go away and come back.
Yes.
That's why like people go for walks and solve different puzzles, and I think that's the other part, is that by doing a hobby, you think about the world differently to how you currently do your job or how you currently do something. And so a lot of originality or creativity comes from mixing multiple different things from different areas together.
Yes.
And so by having a different hobby or a different perspective, it's easier to transform ideas or like focus on something from somewhere else. To then like make it better and refine it and work through that process almost.
Yeah, I think that's true. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, to be so like, imagine spending all the 50 hours or so, or whatever the calculation came up to, just all in on the one thing. Like, that's cool, but like, it's kind of dull in a way. I don't know.
It is like an interesting process of like these obsessed only focus on one thing.
Yeah.
Like the elites in their field only focus on one thing, and that is them and their whole life, and it is impressive to the outside world. And I think part of like what I've been thinking about recently, especially doing this podcast, and what's one of the messages I want to try and get across, is this idea of that the obsession is like, okay, if there's something that you want to work at and be the best in the world, like, go nuts.
Yes, go nuts, please.
Yeah.
Please.
The world needs like, people like you.
Yes.
But at the same time, to like realize that the vast majority of people don't require the obsession, and that variety is like the spice of life. The jack of all trades is the thing that like creates depth to a page, that like it's the equivalent of having a painting that's just black. There's just one coat of black versus like having, oil painting, flat, like feathers on it, different like parts to the painting, different layers, different thicknesses, different oil, water based. I don't know. I'm not an artist.
That's beyond me.
Yeah. But it's like, it adds to the intrigue and the curiosity of life. And do not think it's a bad thing that you're not the number one in the world, that you're not the best, that you're not striving for the top 10, 20.00001% of the world in a lot of areas. And it like, sometimes like life is about to be lived. And it's hard to say it and truly believe it if you haven't got a level of financial success that like you can call a spade, and like, it's like, financially fuck you money versus like freedom fuck you money. It's not money, it's like the ability to go fuck you freedom, or like fuck you money, or like fuck you like way of life. Of like, this is how I'm going to spend my time. Like that's the one thing with a 9 to 5 is you can't be like, nah, stuff it, I'm going for a run in the morning.
Right.
Whereas like your business, like, yeah, I can just do it. But then sometimes you can't for your business because that's how your business runs. Like if you own a coffee shop, you got a business, but you got to work in the mornings because like few people want a coffee at like 10 o'clock at night.
Yes.
It's a hard game.
Yeah, it's like there are all these boulders for us to shoulder and to lift. Which of these boulders are most suitable for our backs is the question.
Or it's like some people just want to carry the one boulder for the rest of their life. And like they're like, this is like...
well, I think we're all in search of the right boulder.
But like, what about you just drop a boulder and you like a different boulder? And like
That's cool. That's cool.
Yeah.
We keep searching till we find the right one that we're more than happy to lift. And then maybe get to a point where even with the boulder on our back, we're more than happy to help someone else lift their own boulders on their shoulders. The meaning of life, lifting boulders.
Up and down boulders. Just balls and boulders is like lifting heavy shit. Very masculine, almost like.
There's a quote, it's a bit cynical, but I kind of think about it every now and then. It's by someone called Rene Girard, and it goes along the lines of like, a man is unhappy until he finds the thing that is beneath the thing that he cannot lift, something like that. But like, I'll rephrase it. A man believes he can only be happy once he finds the thing, but he knows that the thing is underneath the thing that he cannot lift up.
Yeah. it's like very much like the impossible task that you want to like spend your life work revolving around.
Yes.
It's like an end goal of like, why the fuck am I doing this? But you know that like there is no end goal to the end goal.
Just keep lifting the rocks, the boulders.
Yeah. It is all in the process of like Sisyphus just rolling the ball up and down a mountain, just because like such is life.
So why are we running? Because
no more demons.
Life is good.
You run because it's good. You run because it's shit. You just run. It is life.
Yeah, we're running. We're moving, progressing.
To sum up hobbies, I think it's like it's an expression of self, or to like find your own character, to find a way of getting some different shades of life and explore outside of your comfort zone of what is survival, and to try something new and different, or consistent, the same in the same fucking boulder.
I mean, that's cool, right? Like, it's...
I swear it's cool.
It's cool.
It's cool. It's cool.
Like, if someone can look at me in the eyes and tell me straight that they've searched far and wide and they found one particular boulder that they really like and now they're going to stick with that for the rest of their lives, I admire that.
Yeah.
Because for me, all these hobbies, all these things I'm trying to do, more or less, is trying to find the right boulder for me to go all in.
Have you found a boulder?
I've got inklings, but not one that like
stands out.
Is the one that'll be sufficient for the next 50 years.
Okay, you don't have a long-term boulder, you got a short-term boulder.
Yes.
Okay, cool.
And with all these hobbies, I'm still like, oh, maybe I'll try this on. Oh, maybe I'll try this on. How's that? Okay, let's try it for a bit. See what happens. Maybe the boulder evolves. Or may I evolve, I don't know.
Okay, topic of the night, find your boulder. Thanks for listening, guys.